The year is almost over. It's December already, and I've still got a couple more book reviews to get to. So today we are going to be talking about The Big Lie by Dinesh D'Souza. And before I get into it, I just wanted to say I was kind of disappointed with this book, even though it had everything that I thought would make it interesting. Now, The Big Lie was released at a kind of unfortunate time because it was released just before Charlottesville, which changed the whole perspective on Antifa and leftist violence. I think that it's changed a lot since Charlottesville, and the conversation has shifted from a lot of what Dinesh D'Souza said in his book. However, if you are curious, The Big Lie comes from a term from Hitler, who said that the masses tell little lies, but they're afraid of telling the big one. And the premise I get from Dinesh D'Souza is that he is talking about how the Democrats are really the Nazis, and the leftists are really the Nazis. From going through the history of Hitler and Mussolini, early socialists, all the way up to the Clintons and Obama, and whatever remains of the KKK. And it really feels like this book was just a... Jay Sheen said this once: you go to school and it's like you collect different things, but you don't know how to put them together. And this book is just a collection of facts built around kind of a flimsy narrative. It seems that Dinesh D'Souza has on what Evan McGinnis calls the not see glasses. Not see. You do not see because you see Nazis everywhere. And this is dangerous because that's what the left is doing, and we shouldn't encourage that among our own people, and no one should be doing that. It's boring beyond belief. It's amazing, like the term Godwin, if you've ever encountered that term online, it means that political discussions invariably go back to Hitler. And I'm just so fucking sick of hearing about Hitler. It seems that every day it's all we talk about, it's all we see, you know. The H channel, History Channel, was all Hitler this, Hitler this. And even though what he did was terrible and significant, of course, it's not something that we can always refer to in our current political discourse. But this book, I'd say, just attempts to do pretty much that, only it's from a conservative perspective rather than a liberal one. He talks a lot about Andrew Jackson and FDR and the KKK and the racism in American history, going back to colonization and wiping out Indian tribes, and then race, and then slavery, plantations, the concentration camps for the Japanese during World War II under FDR, the racism he suspects that's part of abortion and Planned Parenthood. But he's really just all over the place, and it's hard to find exactly where this is coming from. And critically, I would also say that the writing is just boring. It just took me a long time to get through, even though he was talking about what were obviously enticing subjects to me anyway. Like I'm interested in the current political movement. I'm interested in knowing the roots of Antifa. I'm interested in knowing how all of this affects us today. I am kind of bored with this constant Nazi talk. I've been very harsh so far. I guess there are a few good things to say about it. I mean, he has clearly researched all of these topics. And even though that I don't think they clearly fit together in the way that he's hoping it to fit together, at least it shows a lot of factual information. And it was boring in the sense that I guess like a college lecture can be boring, where there's still information, there's still stuff that you're getting from it, but it's not, I don't know, you're not exactly moved by it. It's amazing, like reading Milo's book, it just had so much attitude, and Hillary's book I was blown away by. I was so impressed by it. It was such a page turner because of the pathology behind the person, because what she was saying clearly made sense to her, but it didn't make sense to me as the reader. But with this, it seems that, yeah, he's making a point, but it's not a dramatic or effectual point. And if anything, it just drives us back down into talking about Hitler again. Not C, Nazi glasses. The evils of FDR coming back and, having his 3 terms and all that. And comparing this person, Kermit Gosnell, to Joseph Mengele, the infamous Nazi doctor, which I just find completely ridiculous. He's putting a lot of these apples to oranges arguments. Okay, abortion, let's look at it. I mean, the Nazis did have forced race-based eugenics, and it's still murder. I still consider abortion murder, but it was not forced upon the people by the state. It may have been encouraged, it may have been presented to the people as an option, and certainly the culture has allowed us to think that it's not really murder, that it's just a kind of contraception, but it's not like the American government had a program to specifically wipe out all the blacks, for example. And so it's really hard to make these stretches. I'm not sure how he does it or how you're able to hold your head together as you're reading this, but it seems like he's talking about different terrible things when really the most salient similarity between them is just that they're terrible. Murder is murder, okay. Now, he does make a few good points about the brown shirt tactics and the Nazi justification for violence, saying, well, we're on the right side, and so we shouldn't even hear the other side talk, which is suspicious if it's coming from both sides, certainly. But comparing Mengele to Kermit Gosnell, come on. Like, Mengele took grown children, twins, like teenagers, and he would separate them or do cruel experiments on them. And that's nothing compared to abortion clinics in the U.S., I would argue, even though abortion clinics have done some horrible things. And he's talked about that in detail, like partial birth abortions and, cutting necks with scissors and stuff like that. Yeah, that stuff is horrible, but it's not done for the same reasons or in the same way. So it's a bit of a leap, but of course, being on the right side, the conservative side, I can say that, well, yes, of course, eugenics programs are bad, and I can see some similarity, I guess, in the sense that we shouldn't have abortion facilities anyway, or we shouldn't be using it as to hurt some races. But it doesn't mean that race is the absolute cause, the absolute reason. Of course, there are many Democrats who were responsible for racist practices, the plantations. Like, the Democratic Party has a long racist history, and I would say that their racism clearly in the historical record outweighs Republican racism, but all sides were horrible. I mean, you talk to anyone, or you read things from 50 years ago or 60 years ago, and we're shocked at the language, even from 10 years ago. I watched Dirty Harry the other day. It's a really cool movie from the 70s. And I thought, as Crowder has pointed out, like, that's one of those movies that can't be made today. And so, of course, looking in history, we can see racist roots to damn near anything, and we can see racism anywhere. And, as Anita Sarkeesian put it, and got teased for it, I mean, racism is everywhere. But I don't think we're going to get ahead by calling the left Nazis and by showing to them, well, okay, if you look at Mussolini's upbringing and the origins of fascism, it looks like he was influenced by socialists and Marxists in early 20th century Europe. I'm not sure what that has to do with our conversation right now. Brown shirt tactics, the obvious. Life after Charlottesville, state-run media. Okay, it's saying state-run media. The NPR is leftist, and the Nazis had state-run media, so a lot of just weak comparisons with lots of facts, with lots of information to back it up. So, I don't know, it just touched me the wrong way. I think if there could be a better book written about Antifa, but anything, it's amazing how one news event could take his book, The Big Lie, and just render most of it obsolete in the sense that he's accusing the left of all being in support of Punch and Nazi and all being in support of liberal Antifa violence, when I think that on the left and in the center and people I've talked to all agree that stuff is completely bogus. And that I don't know anyone on the left or on the right who would be going to these rallies anyway. And so he's taking a very small part of the politically minded people, and he's blowing them up to say, well, all Democrats are in the same strain of racist history and racist Nazism. Anyway, what else do I have to say about this? He talks about, again, he compares Nazi genocide with American genocide, saying, well, there are obvious differences, but let's at least look at how Nazi genocide compares to genocide of American Indians. That's the drum. And how it compares to slavery. Anyway, I gotta get back to class. That's the most I can say about this book. I can't recommend The Big Lie by Dinesh D'Souza, and I can't recommend reading more of his books. But so if you're gonna get a gift for someone, a red-pilled friend of yours, I would pass on The Big Lie. Spend your time reading something else. I would say read What Happened. That's way more interesting to any conservative person, in my opinion.